There is a sea of opportunities in the Niger Delta, and the MDCEO mentioned clearly that the new administration in the Niger Delta is poised to correct mistakes of the past and institute international best practice. In fact, he mentioned that what is happening in the NDDC is the dawn of a new beginning, and that NDDC is being repositioned to serve as a platform to drive development in the Niger Delta. And the NDDC has started by doing administrative reforms and corporate governance reforms. The Permanent Secretary also mentioned that there are plans for a single development strategy for the region. So it is within this context that it's important to rethink NDDC's mandate in the context of current realities, and specifically how to attract development partners. And I think we're quite impressed with the development partners that spoke and made commitment, because it is clear that development partners were working in the Niger Delta. In fact, Niger Delta was priority before in the past. But as a result of a lot of factors, including lack of interest by many governors in the region, public perception of NDDC, and the insecurity in the region made a lot of donors to withdraw from the region. But from the opening ceremony today, we've seen renewed commitment by some of the donors. And this section is to deepen that discussions. So I first of all want to call on Tunji Idowu, who incidentally is one of the few development partners whose major focus is in the Niger Delta. We would like to hear from you, Idowu. What will development partners want to see from NDDC?
I like what you said about massive return, and that's the vision, and that's the hope and aspiration. But one thing I wanted to start off with is that we are not just majorly focused on the Niger Delta at PIND. The Niger Delta is where we focus on. Secondly, when for different reasons development partners exited the Niger Delta, maybe heading to the north because of the developments in the north, we have not left Niger Delta. And so we were the only main game remaining, and the pressure was much. It's, as I said earlier, it's gratifying to hear what the managing director has said, and now we need to make sure that we need to get to where the rubber meets the road. And if and when the NDDC does rise up, as has been said, there will be no lack of those of us who will support, who will line up, and who will be able to help to integrate. But the development community would be looking to see a few things. I like what the permanent secretary said, and that was the point I want to kick off with. We've had a little bit of lack of clarity, to put it mildly, around the roles of different players, NDDC, Ministry of Niger Delta. So one of the first things that will convince development partners is clarity in roles. Once there is clarity in roles, once there are clear roles between the government agencies and then the rest of us, and we all know what each one needs to do and playing to everybody's strength, it becomes easier. We are used to being in consortiums. We're used to having partnerships and not going it alone. That has got to be the direction that the NDDC wants to champion. NDDC is so big in size, in resource base, that it has to play the role that I would love to see the NDDC play the role that PIND has played at its own level. That is being a convener. And you're already on the right track with what you're doing. But a convener of all the actors, because you have that pool to bring all of us together. And when you do that, and you are able to distill from your numerous engagements, and you have a clear understanding of everybody's role and everybody's interest, then it becomes easier to map out actions that play to everybody's respective strength. Let's not underplay it. The state governments often run at cross purposes. You see projects that two states are doing, and they're being duplicated when if somebody could facilitate bringing them together to integrate their efforts and to collaborate, you could have greater scale and greater impact around those. We will be glad to share our experiences in terms of being a convener and having hundreds of partners, and let the NDDC take it even higher to a larger scale. I touched on it a little bit. Development partners like us will be key to see integration of efforts. The Niger Delta does not lack plans. It doesn't lack resources. It is the integration of efforts and the efficient execution that has often lacked. If the NDDC will lead the way and we can have good integration. We've seen one or two states who have designated persons that coordinate development efforts. And in those places, things have moved. We can imagine how much more it will be and how impactful it will be when the MD of the NDDC leads the charge and really puts the NDDC there to pull people together and marry the various interests and have an integrated plan that there will be governance around, and we'll be tracking things at agreed intervals to see how everybody is making progress. There was an attempt with the strategic integrated work plan, but that was majorly focused on infrastructural projects. And I say that it died or it has stalled due to some other extraneous factors. But there are other people in the room who can speak to that, and I'm sure maybe in the next session, my brother Charles Achodo is here. He was very active in that, and we were all involved in that to an extent. But we can see this more around looking at sustainable development efforts. The other thing that I'd like to touch on will be around what is the role. I mean, I started with the role of the NDDC, but the NDDC also has to look at itself and say, I think I'm too big to get involved in executing things that I can otherwise farm out to people and play the role of a donor. But put terms of reference for people who are already doing some of these things well. There are lots of proven models that development partners have in place. For example, between us and Ford, we revolutionize youth skills development, making sure you are not just focusing on the supply side of things, but on the demand side as well, and it's about the things that the market needs. We see in too many states when people just wake up, maybe with good intentions, and then they increase the supply of welders and fitters, and already there is a glut of welders and fitters. And they can't find jobs, and then they get frustrated. But if we really sit down and really play to those who know their onions, then NDDC can fund them and make sure they run it rather than NDDC wanting to implement those things on its own as well. And to build on that is that our own view will be that if NDDC prioritizes key signature projects, it can focus on those and then support others who have proven themselves around agricultural value chains, rich skills development, solar mini-grids, and so on, to do what they are very good at. Development partners will be willing to focus on this, and then to make sure that we are not hinged on old agenda. I heard what the gentleman from the French development agency said. There is abundance of funding and resources for certain topics in today's world. NDDC can tap into those if it aligns its agenda in those areas, and many of us will be willing to do that. Youth skills development. Lots of communities can benefit from solar mini-grids, as we have been doing with other developers. Finally, good governance was mentioned. It's important that that is demonstrated across board so that people can see that this is really going to hold sway for others to be able to put it what they're while. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we give him a better round of applause? Thank you very much. He has raised a number of issues that has implications. And I think one of the implications is for NDDC to begin to consider a kind of desk officer for development issues that will relate with development partners, even as the MD is in the driving seat of engagement with development partners. Tengi, you know, everyone here has talked about the role of different stakeholders. I think it's the MD who started it. Now look, the development of the Niger Delta cannot be done by a single agency. And there is the need for different stakeholders. So what can major stakeholders in the Niger Delta do to improve natural resource governance? You know, Tunji has mentioned that there are resources in the Niger Delta. So they are not short of resources. So what can major stakeholders in the Niger Delta do to improve natural resource governance in the Niger Delta within the context of energy transition? Because the major thing in this world today is energy transition. Thank you. You have your 5 minutes now.
Okay, so thank you for that question. I like the topic of this panel as well because we're looking at rethinking NDDC's mandates in the context of current realities in the Niger Delta. But as the question suggests, it's important to also contextualize that within the global realities of what's going on as well. It's a very important moment that we're in now, and it's important for us to recognize the opportunities and also the need to get it right at this point. The energy transition has severe impacts on the Niger Delta that we have not yet started to unpack in this conversation, and we have to reflect on that first before we can start charting a path forward. There are going to be severe impacts on all communities that rely on revenues from fossil fuels. This also covers the different states that we're speaking about that cover the oil-producing components of Nigeria. Those NDDC states have had different challenges, and those continue to persist in terms of governance, the need for beneficiation for Niger Delta, managing environmental pollution and remediation, revenue management for sustainable development. These are issues that have persisted in the past, but have become even more urgent now within the context of what's going on. We had a microcosm of a view of what Niger Delta could look like without revenues from fossil fuels when COVID-19 happened. We saw the deprioritization of the interests of the Niger Delta and a focus on other issues. This is only a glimpse of what could happen if we do not take the opportunity now to reflect and put certain things in place to ensure financial resilience of these different states, because they could potentially become insolvent because they rely on 50% to 80% from fossil fuel revenues. How do we ensure that the prevalent issues in Niger Delta are treated as a matter of urgency? How do we make sure that the states themselves begin to make direct and proper action to engage the energy transition? There is a national energy transition plan. As was stated earlier on, there's a Climate Change Act, there's a climate change policy, and all these will have a direct impact on these different communities, women, youth, and the people in Niger Delta. How are the state governments engaging this process? How are they designing their own energy transition plans to make sure that we're able to transition in a way that is sustainable and that is just for those who are in those communities? the NDDC has plans to align the plans for the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, but then also are there plans to engage the National Energy Transition Plans? There is a $1.9 trillion investment budget for that plan. How are the states keying into that? How is NDDC planning to engage that process and make sure that those funds also come to the states, to make sure that their projects align with the states? It was mentioned earlier on about the power projects, and there were some conversations or comments around utilizing gas for those projects. But you have a world that is looking at renewables. Are there considerations around solar? Should NDDC potentially revise that plan to look at wind and other renewables to make sure that it can actually attract the funding that it requires? Globally, fossil fuel projects are being defunded. Does it make sense for us to now start making plans that are looking to building out more fossil fuel projects, gas projects that potentially take about a decade to actually come to reality? So we have to think about these things as we're making these plans. More importantly as well, we have to make sure that we engage the people that this will actually affect. Those are key stakeholders. Women who are meant to transition from kerosene to gas potentially, as Nigeria is trying to use gas as the transition fuel, but also renewables. What does that mean, and how can we engage that space? How can the NDDC ensure that it escalates these sort of real life conversations that will have a very deep impact on the livelihoods and well-being of people, so that we do not find ourselves having the world transition and we're still looking back at things that are no longer part of the reality or the scope of what the world is looking forward to. So we need to make sure that we're grounded in making sure that all the different actors play a role, all the different actors understand what their own pathways are, and make sure that we're constantly monitoring that process to ensure that as we are transitioning realistically, inclusively, with the right voices and the right people, we're doing it in a way that can ensure sustainable economic development, but also a sustainable energy future for Nigeria and the Niger Delta people as well.
Please, can you give her a round of applause? If you look at what he has said, it flows from what Tunji said about the need for the NDDC to play the role of a convener, convening the stakeholders in the Niger Delta to play their different roles, especially in the energy transition. Now, for NDDC to play these roles, for NDDC to be a good convener, for NDDC to attract development partners, there are certain reforms that NDDC has to put in place. And NDDC will also need to begin to look at its mandate and whether there are any aspects of the law that needs to be amended. So, Prof, what reforms do you think NDDC can put in place in the short term to make it easy for partnership with development partners? And do you think there is a need to rethink the mandate and the law?
All right, thank you very much. I think I'd like to start by speaking from the point of view of the fact that I'm an intellectual worker. I'm a professor in a university, a professor of sociology with specialization in sociology of developing societies. And I've shown more than a passing interest in some of the intervention agencies that have been created right from the UNPADEC days and the successor organization that you refer to as NDDC today. I'm happy to see that we are rethinking the NDDC mandate, because one of the fundamental things we say in sociology is that change is the most inevitable thing in human nature. And what that means is that if you are rethinking based on what you consider to be the existing lapses. In other words, if there are programs and projects that are now properly being consummated, there is the absolute need for the NDDC to intervene to bridge those gaps. And let me also say this, that it would amount to more of a quick win strategy than getting into very elaborate programs such as it doesn't stop that anyway, but you talked about partnership with even the state and the national government. If I just when the presentation was being made about the need for a the road that will link from Odokwane to Lekki, and I was asking, what of the federal government rail project? Is there no reason why there should be some kind of synergy, in other words, synergize all of these programs, and then NDDC could be also a partner with part of the finances available, limited finances, of course, available to her, and the other development agencies. Now, the point has also been made about participation. That is stakeholder participation. My experience teaching, community development had always revolved about the fact that most projects fail because of the quality of engagement of stakeholders. Because if stakeholders do not see a project as one that they consider priority and were part and parcel of its design, ultimately, projects and programs are created that becomes what Marx will see as alienation. It alienates the people because they don't see themselves in it. And that is part of the things we are beginning to see in most of the development programs. Because we don't have too much of time, so I do not want to be able to begin to elaborate on it. But again, by engaging in such soft sell, quick win projects, NDDC can quickly become a landscape organization. What that means is that you are seen, at least everywhere, within the limit of the available resources. Who says, for instance, that NDDC cannot get involved in helping to enhance the content of educational delivery in the Niger Delta? Right now, we are more inclined to building infrastructure. What goes on within those infrastructure, nobody knows. And so the framework of that development theorizing around that must change to begin to target what is taught and what goes on within those infrastructures. And finally, we need to have the capacity to track projects. I was just asking somewhere along the line, do you have a department, for instance, that has the capacity to monitor the social performance of programs and projects? Because it's absolutely necessary within the context of sustainable development that having given a development program or project is absolutely necessary ultimately to track its performance, in other words, create a dashboard and periodically track it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for the nexus between theory and practice. I think Prof has raised some critical issues that I just want to emphasize. First is the need to rethink the NDDC mandate and look at the laws again. But at the moment, NDDC can even, which is already doing, rethinking its mandate in terms of what it's doing. Like what the MD presented and what Engineer Idowu presented in terms of looking at legacy projects. You don't need to change your law before you can begin to do that. And one of the things which he has said, which I think is also very important from practical point of view, is quick win project. So you must divide your resources between quick win project and those big ticket legacy projects. Otherwise, if those those projects can take time to mature. If people don't see quick wins to point to, then there can be huge challenges. I'm also happy he talked about stakeholder management. But I want to also reiterate what Tengi mentioned about deprioritization of the interests of the Niger Delta. And we have seen how it has happened. At one point in this country, even during campaigns, presidential campaign, the main issue is how they will deal with Niger Delta. But it's no longer that. And you will all recall, for those of us who are both intellectual militant and physical militant, those issues that led to the militancy, environmental degradation, lack of fiscal federalism, all of those things, they are still there. So there needs to be a convening agency that can remind the political elite that those things are still there. I think that is very important. Now, to the last panelist. It's all agreed globally and even within Nigeria that one of the best ways to accelerate development is to have regional groupings to, accelerate the development of each of the regions. And so we have Brace Commission, we have done. But it is clear that the Dawn Commission has been recognized by most development practitioners as the most successful regional grouping in the country. So what we want to hear from you, Abiodun, is what is responsible for the success of the Dawn Commission and what lessons for stakeholders in the Niger Delta? Abiodun.
All right, thank you so much, Doctor. Good afternoon once again. I think for the benefit of those that do not know about Dawn Commission, I just quickly talk about Dawn Commission, which is Development Agenda for Western Nigeria. It was set up by the governments, the six Southwest state government, to midwife their regional cooperation and collaboration towards development. Nothing political about it. It's just purely development issue. And that needed to be said so that we know that they isolate or don't be isolated from the political calculations in the region. So that's why that no matter the government, no matter the political party that controls the state, Dawn works with all political parties. Understand? Dawn have 5 development pillars. We have economic development, we have social and human development, infrastructure development, building inclusive institutions, which is about governance, transparency, accountability, and then homeland affairs. It is the Homeland Affairs desk that produced the regional security outfit that came up recently when we were having issue with insecurity in Southwest. This is the Amotekun. The Amotekun is the brain work of the Dawn Commission. So the Dawn Commission, like it has been said, I think Mr. Tunji Idowu mentioned about convening power. The Commission has that convening power. So unlike the NDDC, the Dawn Commission does not implement. We just generate ideas and we use the instrumental of the state public service to implement whatever we come up with. But it has been accepted by all the governments of the Southwest region. So we have that convening power to bring together all government functionaries and top government functionaries I'm talking about in the region to discuss, to brainstorm on issues of resonance and then collectively also fashion out solution, bearing in mind the local context of each of the states. So those are the kind of way we work in the region. And the success factor, like I said, the one thing is we are not involved in the political process. We are just development. We don't get involved in anything politics so that we give confidence to all the parties to be able to relate with us, and we're not serving anyone. And secondly, is to say that there is also an kind of acceptability, because most of the things we do, if not all, are informed by the agenda of the state government. So we make sure that whatever we do, the state government could see themselves in whatever we are proposing to them. So we look at the state government, maybe a new government is coming up, we look at the manifestos, we look at the state development plans, and from there, we'll be able, in our 5 development pillars, we are able to come up with issues of resonance, within the region, and then sell it to the state government, because that is part of the agenda of the principal officers of the state. They are able they are able to buy into it. So for me, I think the issue, and another thing that we need to talk about is, because of the complexity about the NDDC, I like to mention this point, and I think the MD said it earlier when he talked about the process of developing the budget of NDDC for this, that all stakeholders are involved. So the point is, how can we institutionalize that process, that there will be people that are aggregating the interests of the state government, so that when the NDDC is working, they are not duplicating the effort of the state government, they are working in collaboration with the state government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's clap for the Dawn Commission. I think what he has said also brings another possible action and responsibility for the NDDC, because the Brace Commission has not had all of these good factors that has made the Dawn Commission to work very effectively. And I was discussing with Ambassador Joe Keshi, and he mentioned that, initially there were discussions even between Brace and Dawn, and all of these ideas are not new. It's just that it didn't work in terms of the Niger Delta. So one of the things that the Commission can do is to engage with Brace Commission and support Brace Commission, so that this idea of regional development can be revived within the region. Before I throw it back to the audience, is that development theorists and practitioners have agreed that if you want to make any intervention that will touch the life of people, you focus on 4 areas: infrastructure, agriculture, education, and health. So as NDDC begins to rethink, these are some of the issues. I wonder at times, NDDC has been around for 20 years. Assuming that in the 9 states, that NDDC just budgeted 1 billion for housing every year, and say, look, give generous contract to people to build 2-bedroom. We can imagine the number of houses that will have been built. And every state you go, you will see NDDC housing estate. That's what Jakande did, that up to today, people still remember Jakande. And in spite of the problem of the Shagari administration, I lived in Maiduguri. Shagari locus is one of the biggest areas. So these are things to think about as we go along. So let's throw it open to the audience. Comments, questions, and discussions. Here, can we give number 1, number 2, wow, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 minute. Okay, 7, 8. I'm looking at here now, 8. So number 1, can somebody help me with the microphone, please? Number 1. Just 1 minute. If 8 of you take 5 minutes, that is 40 minutes. 1 minute. 8.
Hello.
Yes, 1 minute.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, just question or comment.
Yes, my name is Dr. Samson Ezekan. I work with United Nations Population Fund. So one is an advice. I want to observe that NDDC has capacity. But in rethinking their mandate, I want them to think in this way. I think the commission knows the what and then the how of what they do. They know what to do, they know how to do it, but they lack it. There's a gap in why you do what you do. And that's the moral philosophy of the intervention. Now, the second thing is question to the professor. Prof, I want to ask, using the quantum theory of development, how do you think that NDCC will work in terms of the role of human element in delivering dividend to the community? Thank you so much. But the why is very important.
Don't want to do PhD thesis for you. Number 2. No, at the end.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Dr. Nasamu Uluwatoyin. I'm the Technical Assistant to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. I think from the little I learned from this group, we've dedicated so much energy to plans, policies, but little attention to the implementation strategies, which is the key. No matter how beautiful the plans, the policies, you launch it several times, redeem it, you review it, when there is no key implementation strategies.
So, thank you. So
I think that's an issue.
focus on implementation.
And secondly, stakeholder engagement, as said by the Prof.
Thank you.
This will give an opportunity for you to evaluate. This project you are doing, is it really making any impact on the people you are doing it for? If a community is in need of a potable water, and what you can do for them is one big health center, which they are already having a facility for health. So indirectly, you are not really helping their situation.
Thank you very much. Number 3, can we clap for Ministry of Niger Delta? Technical Assistant. Number 3. Anybody want to forget the number, you jump on. Number 3, quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Professor Magnus Sonoha, a principal consultant of Green Oil. Mr. Chairman, I'll be looking at, I'll address it within the context of the presentation by Dr. Audi. The 2 signature projects, which is the Niger Delta project. And I agree with Wills that the Niger Delta Power Project will revolve around the energy transition. And the energy transition, in terms of priority, the natural gas, we have it in quantum in Niger Delta. So that is going to be a transitional fuel that has been approved in climate change in 2021. So it's a clean fuel. So the second one, in terms of priority, is solar electrification. We have the technology now, the solar home system and the mini-grid. So there are 3 priorities, I don't have time now, that within the context of energy transition to address the Niger Delta power. Then the second one is the Odukwane Road, East-West Road, from Odukwane to Lake. We're going to address the climate action. That is why I appreciate what the President Justice said. When you're doing the road, the quantum of deforestation, we'll be looking at greening those corridors, and that's the climate action. It's a huge mitigation option for Nigeria, and that's what the investors are looking at. That's why he's interested in the climate action. Okay, and so that is a model that we can take, and these 2 signature tools can give us the carbon credits we are talking about.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's so much to say. Thank you.
Number 4. I think notes are being taken. Number 4. Yes. Number 4. 2 people are putting their hands as number 4.
Okay, thank you.
I hope the usher did not ring it. Eh? All right, number 4, go on.
Okay, thank you. My name is Muyabu Legosi. I work for Nigeria Private Sector Alliance. I just want to contribute by saying that with the vision or the new vision of unwinding to rebate and the kind of work that the MD has in mind, that there will be need, just a way of suggestion, that there should be another forum called NDDC Investors Forum. Because the volume of fund that NDDC expect or anticipate to get, development partners don't fund capital projects. And it will be difficult putting this energy in this way. Rather, in the spirit of recalibration, we should properly highlight what development partners can do within the context of the SDG, which speaks to the various work they are already doing. But when it comes to the high volume capital project that we are looking at, the question will be, what is in it for us in terms of investment? So let's speak to the right audience in the course of this unwinding or rewinding to rebate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. World Bank, Africa Development Bank, they are all development partners. They can fund large projects. Number 5.
Please give me number 4. I want to appeal for that privilege, please.
You have already taken over, so go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. My name is Sofia Furebi Akene. I'm a geomatic professional representing Center for Environmental Preservation and Development. Yeah, when you were talking, you said about performance tracking system, and I really want us to emphasize that, so that the issues of delayed or abandoned projects should be brought to book timely. In addition to that, as part of that performance tracking system, we should be able to do what we call change detection analysis on all our project sites and all that, with inclusive finances annually. It's more or less an annual appraisal, but it has some technicalities that come into it, change detection analysis into it. That will give us a precise evaluation and update of what goes on in the NDDC. Now, the last one is, just like the immediate past speaker said, the Odupane Road. The question I may want to ask is, of what benefit will it be to the Niger Delta communities, vis-a-vis like the ones in Bayelsa, Delta, even Cross River and all that? And more so, that is a thick rainforest area, passing through a lot of wetland, and the environmental issues associated with it. Did we take cognizance of it before we did that?
You saw where the road is passing through.
The route? No, actually at that time I wasn't around.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the other associated thing is that it is servicing somewhere from the Niger Delta as the last spot. And we're talking about abandonment of Port Harcourt Port and other ones.
Thank you.
So you should consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 5. 1 minute, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Tija Bolton. I work for Policy Alert. I want to take off from where my brother Legosi left off, which is about the wrong emphasis for the right audience. The emphasis here today has been a lot on infrastructure, or the hardware of development, as opposed to the software, which most of the donors in the room are more interested in. Areas like livelihoods, agriculture, poverty reduction, peace building, and so on. And these software areas of development, the core human development functions, actually thrive on participation, which Prof spoke about, but stop just shy of underscoring the role of an important stakeholder group in that process, which is civil society. The demand side has been, over time, neglected. And I think there is a conspicuous absence of that civil society theme in the room here today. So going forward, in rethinking the role of the NDDC, it will be important for the NDDC to prioritize civil society's role as the demand arrowhead to drive needs that are prioritized on the basis of what the communities really want. And then also to address the other issue that has been raised on the panel, which is about tracking. A lot of the inefficiencies around the NDDC has been the gap between implementation and tracking. And that tracking value is always provided, evidence abounds that it is provided by vigilant civil society.
Thank you. I think it's a valid point that development, I made mention of it earlier, that development theory and practice have agreed that if you want to touch life, you do 4 things: infrastructure, agric, education, and health. And even though the emphasis in the presentation was on 2 signature projects, I think the understanding is that all these issues are necessary for development, and that informed the kind of development partners that have even invited. So I think it's in taking it forward that your suggestion will be important. Number 6.
Thank you very much. My name is Ijoma Okiriki-Adaba. I work with the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, and my contribution comes as an intervention. I think one of the challenges we experience while working around NDDC is the opacity that is domiciled in that commission. So because the commission gets a lot of revenues from a lot of sources, from the statutory accounts, from the total budget of onshore and offshore companies, from the Ecological Fund Office, and even from partner donors, I think it is very important for us to be able to access the documents of the NDDC, and this is very important for even the funders and the communities. So rethinking the mandate of the NDDC, plans should be on ground to ensure that the community and citizens are able to access the NDDC, the commission itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that is a valid point. And talking about intervention agencies in the Niger Delta, it started with the Niger Delta Development Board, which was set up in 1961. When the board was set up in 1961, not a single member of the board came from the Niger Delta. All the members of the first board were from other areas except Niger Delta. And from Nigeria, the NDD board, to OMPADEC, to NDDC. One of the things that I think the new leadership will have to engage with is to make sure that the statutory allocations to the NDDC are collected. It will require high-profile political movement by the MD to the Presidency, National Assembly, and the Ministry of Finance. At the end of OMPADEC, when some calculations were made, OMPADEC received just about 12% of its allocation. I've not seen any study doing the percentage of what is due to NDDC, and you know, engagement with donor partners like this is a veritable source of helping to do advocacy on those issues. So for what you cannot say, you know, you bring the information to some of us who can say it. Number 7. Okay. Number 8. The last one.
Good afternoon, MD, and every other participant here. You will just indulge me 2 minutes because...
no, I can even give you 3 or 4.
Thank you. Because Tunji actually touched on the power project. Okay, the prof actually spoke so intelligently about that, but let me just further explain. We're looking at adding 7 gigawatts to the grid in the Niger Delta. You don't generate such from renewables, especially in the Niger Delta. And in any case, all the 15 power stations were in the stage. We have engaged with Tony Elumelu Foundation for entrepreneurship training for our people. We are also partnering with IFAD on agriculture, big time. You know, so, but this omnibus mandate make us to spread ourselves so thin, and then the metric of measurement, that is why this story keeps repeating. What has the NDDC done? What has the NDDC done? So, my recommendations are quite simple. the act, we need to revisit the act. And the area, somebody said, okay, it's Dr. Tibe, how do we know how much is owed to, are we tracking? The truth is we know, we have a figure. We know that the statutory allocations will fall short of over 2 trillion. Okay, so the act, if it is amended with provision of some penalties, some consequences, that will help us a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But just to say that we don't have to wait for the act to be amended before we do some of those things. Okay? And then secondly, you know, the amount that is being owed, give us a formal figure of it. And then, you know how things, I'm sure you all know how things are done in this country. Hello? You guys know now. Okay, if they owe you like that, you keep quiet. Nobody will pay. You don't say anything about it. Nobody says anything about it. They will quantify. They will continue owing you until they will not pay you anything again. We know what happened now. In the Niger Delta, the revenue allocation formula from 50-30 is actually 70-20. Because 30% was distributable food. To 0. It was 0 from 1979 to 83. And it was agitations that brought it to 13%. And our agitations have not succeeded. That's why it has not gone to, it was about going to 25%, you remember? So if you keep quiet, and there are no statutory deduction, they are not paid, and you keep the figures in your, without formally, okay? All right, so, yes, okay, MD want to speak. Anytime MD want to speak, nobody can. Please give MD
Well, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just in furtherance to what Mr. Idowu said, I listened to the panelists and I took some notes. Let me start with my prof, who said we should go into quick win projects. I want to assure you that NDDC have been doing a lot of quick win projects. There is virtually no community in the Niger Delta that you will not find NDDC projects. Yet the whole world has been clamoring NDDC have not done anything. Even in my community, even before I became MD of NDDC, we had NDDC projects that I did not know how those projects came into that community. But people say NDDC have not done anything. Because for the optics, people are not seeing them. NDDC used to have this 30 minutes program on channels. They advertise this, and yet people say NDDC have not done anything. Today, if you look at Nigeria, one of the former presidents that is really celebrated is IBB. Because of what? Third Mainland Bridge. Because of what? FCT. But probably other leaders did other things. If you talk about programs, NDDC have done a lot of medical outreach. Those things, people cannot really quantify them because people don't see them. It is expensive. NDDC have been doing, if you talk about human development, NDDC have been engaged in foreign scholarship. People, all these years, people don't quantify all those things to gauge the success of NDDC. But when we talk about partnering to carry out big projects, is because if that was the narrative, why don't we now change the narrative? Because we're in a society where you must also follow the dictates of what the people want to see and what the people want to hear. It is not because we believe we have done so much, so we must also remain in that position that we've done so much. The people want to see big projects. And hence, in our 2024 budget, we're saying that, okay, with the funds that are available to us, if even it means doing five projects per state, let us do 5 projects per state, let people see. Not the one that will spread ourselves so thin and people don't see anything. Nigerians want to see. The international community want to see. Today, the landmark projects we have, if you go to the Ogbianembe Road, that is the biggest project, and it's about 27 kilometers with about 7 bridges. The other one in Akwa Ibom, and I believe those are the kind of projects people want to see. So why don't we go back to that? Because if we talk about the quick win projects, we have state governments, let them also do the 1 kilometer road, the monopumps and other things. Just like as he talked about the clarification of role. We must clarify our role as a people. Because if we are going to drive the development of the region, we are now coming up on this platform to bring all these people together to say, let us come together. Somebody talked about the soft development, and yes, whatever soft or hard, let us bring all of them together. It is going to be for the benefit of our people. But if we can also access the big projects, let us achieve them. I gave a clear example about the Warriors-Kravos route. If Chevron is willing to partner, and other development partners are also willing to partner, it is going to add value to the lives of the people of the Niger Delta. Because if Warri is linked up to Kravos, the benefit will also get to Port Harcourt, because it's just about 2 hours away. It will get to Port Harcourt. Because almost all the oil companies in Port Harcourt, they've left. Their headquarters are now in Abuja, Ajib. If you go to Port Harcourt today, Port Harcourt is virtually a civil service town now. It's no more what it used to be.
That's what happened to Warri years ago.
So, please, I just want the audience to understand our vision. And it is not as if we don't appreciate the fact that, yes, we have to start small. Areas where you need to support us big, support us big. The Niger Delta is in their need of development, whether big or small. So do not limit yourself. If even it is a small one, give to us. My father used to tell us that when you go to a place where they are sharing money, if even it is one kobo, don't say you're too big for 1 kobo. Take it. So that let your name be on that list which there is in sharing 1 kobo. So that the day they are sharing 1 million, they will not skip your name. So if you have 1 kobo to donate to us, please support us with the 1 kobo. If you have the 1 billion,
I
please.
think that is wisdom. Eh?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, MD. I think what MD has said, we want all the support that we can get, both small and big, both soft and hard. And that NDDC will do big projects, not just because that is what Nigerians want, but because that can have multiplier effects. And so what NDDC needs to do is a balance between the big projects and the quick wins. All right, so we're rounding up 1 minute to just... yes.
All right.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. I just want to say something that I think I skipped earlier on as you look at the ecosystem. The Petroleum Industry Act presents a huge opportunity in terms of the Chapter 3 that has to do with the community development. The NDDC needs to look at that set of stakeholders and integrate its efforts into what is coming out of that, because that's another very huge pot of developmental resources. And so to make sure part of that integration, those community trusts are included in that. Second one is sustainability. To build sustainability into all projects. Infrastructure projects are good, but we have to make sure that we target and cite them to support productive economic uses. Bridges in the middle of nowhere that are not supporting economic activities and hoping that people will then come may not turn out to be so true. Something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 sentence, thank you.
That was more than one. That's discrimination against my gender. Yeah, so I just wanted to pick up on some of the gentlemen on that side said. He said, why are we doing what we're doing? So we're thinking sustainability, sustainable development, and creating a sustainable energy future. I thank the gentlemen for their comments around the power projects, and it's looking at gas and solar, etc. The business of why we're here is to look at raising funding. And the point I made was that with fossil fuels, gas as well, the development partners and the globe in general are reducing funding for those projects. If we're building heavy and we're saying we're looking for funding, you will not get funding. So we're saying, how can we be realistic in our plans and make sure that we're right-sizing our ambitions and making sure that we can achieve the sustainable energy future and the sustainable development? If we don't do that, we're just designing plans that are not going to be implementable, and then this exercise will be futile. So it's important for us to make sure that we're doing that and we're engaging in a plan that we all can come to, and ensure that 10 years, if you tap projects for gas now, 10 years down the line, when demand has reduced, we don't have infrastructure to tap these resources, we then abandon it and we have stranded assets. So it's making sure that the plans that we're developing, we're asking those critical questions. And then when we have the answers after modeling and proper investigation, then we can now move forward. Otherwise, it's futile. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. One sentence. How can a professor give one sentence? Let's see whether it's possible.
I will manage to give one sentence. Yeah, I mean, I think the point we're practically saying the same thing. First, you don't have, the entirety of the resources you need. You're asking for assistance. And what that means is that we need to prioritize what we are doing in such a manner that when you start a project, you complete it. My worry and concern really is the very high menopause rate of projects in the Niger Delta.
Menopause?
Yeah, menopause. Very
That's a professorial statement.
I'm sorry, I think at this level, I'm entitled to semantic, innovation. All right, so the point I'm therefore making is I think the MD has made the point also. We discussed some of these things in the classrooms and so on, is to say that let NDDC not spread herself so thin. Do those things that, one of the governors was making a point lately that, look, one of the major setbacks to project implementation in Nigeria is that you plan a project for 1 billion, meanwhile you have 20 million. By the next year, the cost of the project has quadrupled, and then you put another 20 million. I mean, at the end of the day, that project just, fizzled out. And to say, finally, we also have to have the capacity for expectation management among stakeholders in the Niger Delta. That this thing you see is not just that there's so much money, there's so much milk and honey flowing, but it can be managed in such a manner that it can touch critical aspects of the development of the Niger Delta.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
All right, quickly, I just want to, I would like, though the technical advisor to the permanent secretary has gone, but I like to address, if people think that the problem is implementation. The problem is planning. The problem is planning. If you don't plan effectively,
you can't implement.
You have issue with implementation. So it is not, so for an organization like NDDC, there is a need to make itself a going concern that no matter the changes that is happening in the states, they can plan for long years. The state government, they don't plan for longer years because of the elections that is coming. But for a going concern organization like NDDC, they should plan, they can afford to plan for a long time, but in collaboration with some state institutions. So that's, by the time you plan with the state institutions, even if you leave, there's going to be sustainability of those projects. And in planning, sorry sir, in planning, you are also including your M&E, which includes those indicators. So somebody that talked about performance tracking, you will know if you are failing, if you actually plan effectively, because there is going to be M&E framework in your plans, and you will know if you are failing or not with your milestones. Lastly, sir, I just want to say about what the MD said about people are not sending. People in Nigeria in particular, we keep measuring ourselves using HDI, Human Development Index, but we still want to talk about the physical infrastructure. I think if you are planning, like we said, if you are using indicator, we should focus on our HDI as a measuring indicators. What is the rate of poverty when you started your planning? What is the rate of poverty now? What is the rate of unemployment when you started your planning? What is the rate now? I think that is much more important than shiny buildings or something, because people don't understand. But unfortunately, they judge us. They say Nigeria is the capital city, poverty capital.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
But
thank you.
We have more.
Can we clap for him? Can we clap for him? Thank you. We have overstayed our time. Thank you very much for, it has been a very wonderful panel and with active participation. So we look forward to the next panel. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much. Let's have a group photograph, the panelists in front here. Thank you. Let's put our hands together for this panel. It's a job well done.